Feast your eyes on this. Malaysia's building a multi-billion-dollar mega island. It's big, it's bold, and in all honesty, it looks pretty spectacular. It's rising out of the sea, spread across hundreds of acres of reclaimed land, connected to the mainland via 2 bridges.
And okay, right about now, you're probably thinking, hang on a minute, didn't he already make this video? And yes, that's true, but it was about Malaysia's Forest City, a $100 billion project that's now ground to a halt.
Only about 9,000 people live here, and most of the units that you see behind me are actually still empty.
Locals call it Ghost City, and on first impressions, you can see why.
It was supposed to have 4 islands, but only has a single island and is home to a mere fraction of the 700,000 people that were set to live there. What this is about is Andaman Island, another project that could become Malaysia's next ghost city.
Nestled between Thailand and Indonesia in the south of Asia, Malaysia has been quietly expanding. And I don't just mean in terms of global influence, it's quite literally growing.
Since 1991, this nation's reclaimed more than 80 square kilometres of land from the sea, and a lot of that recent expansion has been in the state of Penang, and specifically in the areas around Penang Island.
In 2008, the island's capital Georgetown was given UNESCO World Heritage status.
UNESCO has sought to capture that very essence by declaring the island's commercial hub a World Heritage Site.
Recognised for its unique architecture and townscape, UNESCO decided it offered outstanding universal value. And on the face of it, that sounds great. But there's a catch. It began to transform the city. People from all over the world began flooding to Georgetown. The city gentrified to cater to its new worldwide audience, building shops, attractions, and luxury seaside developments. But given that Georgetown sits on an island, there's only so much space. And while a huge chunk of the land is covered in forests, its mountainous terrain means building on it would be a nightmare. You know the existing areas must be out of the question when developers would rather pay to raise a whole new section of the land in the sea.
So this right here is Andaman. It's a $14 billion new island that's being built off the coast of Penang Islands to cater to the growing demand for high-end developments in this region.
But given Malaysia's recent history with projects like this, you're probably thinking the same thing as me. Spending this much money on a swanky new island is a pretty bold move. It's not like Forest City is some kind of inspirational success story. Now, this new island is the second phase of a master plan that's transforming the coastal areas of Penang. Land reclamation isn't a new concept here. Compare any modern map of the area to one from before the turn of the century and you'll see that hundreds of acres of land has already been raised. Now, if we set the clock back to 2016, this area wasn't much more than sea, sand, and fish. Over the following 9 years, hundreds of acres of land has been raised using crazy amounts of sand. And by 2030, the whole project should be complete. What I want to show you is how they're doing it, because raising an island like this takes no shortage of hard graft and engineering mastery. For starters, sand is collected from a source location using something called a trailer suction hopper dredger. In basic terms, it's a big ship like this with an underwater suction pipe that sucks up sand like a vacuum cleaner. The sand is then emptied onto the Andaman site through steel pipes and conveyors to start building out the island's foundations. In the simplest possible terms, that's pretty much how reclamation works. But as a viewer of the B1M, I know why you're here, so let's dive a little bit deeper. The next step on the journey to building a multi-billion-dollar island is another big vehicle. This one is called a prefabricated vertical drain, or PVD, crawler rig. The crawler comes along and inserts vertical drains through the sand into the clay to allow water to escape. A thick layer of earth called surcharge is then placed on top of the sand, forcing everything to compress, pressurising the water up the pipes and out onto the surface.
Now, I know what you're thinking. He must have missed a step in his Land Reclamation 101 class, because how do you stop all that sand from just floating away? Well, you do it with something called a rock bund, which is basically this kind of big perimeter wall that you build around your site. It's really strong. It's made of rocks that weigh up to 115 kilograms each, and they're used to hold the fill sand in place. But then, during the land reclamation process, that wall goes through a bit of a transformation.
The rocks are shaped into a slope to absorb the energy of incoming waves, acting as a form of coastal defence. The wall needs to be sturdy enough to fend off waves, corrosion, and at times, even tsunamis. In 2004, while the first phase of the project along the coast of Penang Island was being completed, a tsunami did indeed hit Malaysia. And even though that rock revetment wall was only partially completed at the time, it still managed to withstand the incredible forces of the water. While there's only so much a coastal defence system can do against such a powerful force of nature, the sloped face of a revetment wall allows it to break down the waves and dissipate their energy. If ever an engineering proof of concept was needed, the events of 2004 were it. Now, for obvious reasons, building on top of unstable foundations is not a good idea. So the underlying clay and sand that make up Andaman are monitored for months to track how they're settling. And they must be pretty happy with progress, because buildings are already popping up across the island. They're being constructed using spun piles. It's a process where reinforced concrete columns are forced down through the layers of sand and clay to create a stable footing for building foundations. And this new island, along with its fancy condos, is being connected to Penang Island via 2 road bridges. One to Straits Quay, an already reclaimed section of land, and the other to Gurney Bay, an area currently being raised and developed. While Andaman will offer economic support to Penang through its shopping malls, offices and retail spaces, one of the key drivers for the whole development is luxury housing. Properties along the coast fetch prices at an outrageous premium. On average, they sell for 50% more than those elsewhere. So, when you consider the fact that Andaman is a hefty 760 acres, it's not much of a surprise to hear that it's already being filled with fancy high-rises. Around 5,000 homes are being created for an estimated 16,000 people, and we're not talking about your everyday Joes. Consider this: the average new apartment in Malaysia costs $140,000. Meanwhile, it looks like homes on Andaman are ranging in price from a reported $120,000 to $1.6 million. It seems like the lower end will be affordable, but we know the majority are likely to be luxury apartments. The developers themselves have actually said that. So we have a multi-billion-dollar island flush with luxury apartments for those with money to burn. Is anyone else getting Forest City-themed deja vu? We've been down this road before, but there are a few reasons why Andaman might just be avoiding becoming Forest City 2.0. The original mega-development is 600 kilometres south of Andaman, connected to the Malaysian state of Johor. The plan was to build 4 man-made islands, all connected by a rapid transit line. Forest City was meant to be a dream paradise for all mankind, kitted out with a hotel and golf resorts, shops, restaurants, apartments, offices, basically, you name it, they were building it here. But what really makes Andaman Island any different? Well, to start with, the scale. As I mentioned at the start of the video, the aim was for Forest City to house 700,000 people, whereas Andaman is going to host a much more modest just 16,000. Forest City was a huge multi-island project set to span some 3,000 hectares, rather than the 760 acres set aside for Andaman. And then there's the funding. Forest City came with an eye-watering $100 billion price tag. It was backed by the Chinese mega-developer Country Garden, working with the Malaysian company Esplanade Danga 88. The problem is that China fell into a property crisis. To tackle the issue, the government issued strict limits on developers borrowing cash. That left Country Garden in billions of debt, abandoning projects across the world. On top of that, Chinese nationals were told they could spend no more than $50,000 overseas each year, which is a bit of a nightmare for this commercial zone that was ready to welcome tourists and overseas buyers. In 2018, Malaysia's Prime Minister Mahathir Mohamad decided that he'd had enough. He made his intentions clear, declaring he had no intention of granting visas to foreigners wanting to live in Forest City. Throw a global pandemic into the mix, and you start to see why property sales in Forest City plummeted. Some reports from 2023 claimed only 1% of the 28,000 apartments were actually occupied.
And that's a key difference here. Andaman comes at a fraction of the cost of Forest City, albeit $14 billion is still a lot of money. It's being led this time by a Malaysian company, E&O Berhad. So The prospects of a foreign property crash impacting this project, slowing it down or preventing progress in some way, feels pretty unlikely.
It's generally a much more realistic undertaking. Andaman's an extension of an already popular region, reacting to demand in the area for luxury housing, and it's shown in the numbers. As of summer last year, 4 of the island's condo towers were reportedly already sold out. Meanwhile, Forest City feels like it really overreached. It was planned as a massive metropolis, relying on thousands of foreigners moving to or buying second homes there.
For now, work is cracking on to complete Andaman, and the second phase of the island is well underway. When you look at this, it really does feel like the lessons of Forest City have been learned. Andaman is a smaller project, and it's being built in an area that does have higher existing demand. I guess the real question is it going to be genuinely a success, or could it end up as another Malaysian ghost city? Really, that's a question that only time can answer. Don't forget that we're raising awareness of construction's mental health crisis and supporting charities in this space through our Get Construction Talking initiative. You can learn more and find links to support over at getconstructiontalking.org. And as always, guys, if you enjoyed this video and you want to get more from the definitive video channel for construction, make sure you're subscribed to the B1M.